to ParenTween Connection Talks, where we bring you insight from the experts who can help you navigate life with teens and tweens. I'm Clarissa Constantine, your host and founder of the ParenTween Connection. I've worked with teenagers and their families for more than 20 years, and I believe that the more supported and knowledgeable their parents and members of the proverbial village feel, the better they can connect with and advocate for their teens and tweens. And ultimately, that means we'll lose fewer kids to suicide. So join us as ParenTween Connection talks about anything and everything teen and tween related. And when we're done, we invite you to come on over to our Facebook group to continue the conversations. Today's guest is Katherine O'Brien of Celtic College Consultants. I've known Katherine since the mid-2000s, and I was thrilled when she decided to join the ParenTween Connection's trusted expert network. She has an extensive background in college consulting, including supporting students in college and career exploration, college selection, college funding support, application support, including the essay, and leadership and study skill development. During our time together, we talked about the benefits that a college consultant can bring to the application process and what you can expect if you choose to add one to your team. So, Katherine, thank you for being on the next edition of ParenTween Talks.
My pleasure. Nice to see you, Clarissa.
And it's so good to have you here. I know you and I have known each other for at least a decade at this point, as we've both worked in the college admissions, higher education realm. And I'm super excited that you're one of our founding members of the Trusted Expert Network.
Yes.
And today, all of our listeners are super, super lucky because this is actually going to be our first podcast episode relative to the college admissions process. And so today, Katherine, we're talking about what exactly is a college consultant? What does a college consultant do? How can a college consultant help a family? And then for those of you who are members of ParenTween University, we're going to have a special episode just for you, or a special segment just for you, about how to actually evaluate college consultants to find the professional that's the right fit for you, because there are many. They have limited space because they offer very customized, very high touch options. And so it's really important that we learn how to do that. So let's start. Who are you? What do you do? And what is a college consultant?
So I'm Katherine O'Brien, and I'm a certified college planning specialist. And I've been doing this since 2004. And what I do is come alongside a family, work with the young person to help them figure out who they are, what they want to do, and where to go, and how to pay for it. So I'll meet one-on-one with the student at least once a month. And we do everything from personality surveys to career exploration to looking at majors and schools and talking about leadership and course selection and all kinds of things like that. And I have a couple of responses I get from parents that I definitely want to address. Some are like, oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? And the others are like, oh, I can do this. You don't need anything to do this. And I chuckle in the back of my head going, I have read hundreds of books and done, countless hours of continuing education on this and continue to do it because it keeps changing. So, and as a parent, I get it because we know our kids, we can do a lot for them. We can advocate for them. We can see their strengths and weaknesses, and we want to tease those out. As a former child, though, I also know that there's a space inside of us as we're developing that we need some privacy. And we're exploring and we're, do I really want to be an engineer or a lawyer or whatever? And if I tell mom or dad, they're going to get all excited because they think that's a great idea. And I'm just trying it out. So I'm not ready to commit yet. So coming alongside a family to work with a student, I really have that opportunity for the kid to be honest with me. Yeah, everybody says I'm really good at, but I hate it. Like in my case, I did engineering. I was really good at math. I'm still really good at math. Engineering was not my thing. Mm-hmm. But it was kind of a thought of, well, you can do science and math, so you should do that. You're a woman in the 80s, go be an engineer. Hoorah. And I'm like, okay. And I could, but I didn't like it.
Right.
And to help bring that voice to the student so that then they have played with it and they have explored it and they can really articulate the parts of their personality, the things that they're good at, the things that they like to do, the things that they value. I want to change the world by making better medicine or cleaning up the environment or whatever their passion is, and present that to their parents in a more stable form, a more well thought out form, and a more solid form in themselves. Because mom and dad, we do great things in encouraging our kids, but that slightest pause, they're like, oh no, they think it's a bad idea. And that they're so sensitive as teenagers when they've had the opportunity to work with another adult to have more of an informed opinion about themselves. They can weather that pause, which is maybe I'm distracted, or I hadn't thought of that, or gee, I'm not sure what that is you're talking about. I've not heard of that career. And they're much more able to weather that sense of insecurity and actually have that conversation and move it forward with the parents.
Well, and so it sounds to me, and in my experience in collaborating with professionals like you, as we have, there's a couple of things where I see a huge advantage in terms of what you do. Number one, I've heard you today say you're an advocate for the student and helping them put the pieces of their thoughts together, because, and this is one of my big messages to parents in the work that I do, is we look at the young people in our world and they look so grown up, and they're only a couple of years away from being out on their own. And yet we forget that while the outside of their body has developed probably 80-90% toward maturity, the frontal lobe of their brain has not. And so some of those pauses that you mentioned, sometimes it is something that the kid hasn't thought about. Sometimes they just are slower at processing some of these things. And I have witnessed families have conversations where the parents get very frustrated when the student, like, in essence, can't keep up sometimes, because sometimes they just need that opportunity to process. And whatever the conversation, whether it's my first boyfriend or college admissions or what I want to do with the rest of my life, those conversations can be very laden with landmines. And so I see not only that you or somebody like you can function as an advocate for the student to help them figure out who they are, what they want to do, what problems they want to solve, however, on whatever scale is appropriate for that student as an individual. But it also, I've seen somebody like you connect the conversation and make it a much more cohesive conversation. And holy cow, the number of parents who have said to me, Clarissa, I've said that to my kid 100 times and they don't hear me. And you say it once and it's like you walk on water. And my response to them is, it's because I'm not mom in this case anyway. I mean, I'm not a mom, but I'm not mom to your kid.
Right. And that's one of the things I do is triangulate. And I'm very on the table with the student that I'm going to talk to your parents about you, and I'm going to hear from them about you. And kind of, we're going to gang up on you if we need to, both to support your successes and to catch your failures so that things aren't going through the cracks because you get behind or you get overwhelmed or you have something that just didn't work out the way you wanted it to, or you're a quieter, more introverted kid and you have this great accomplishment, but you don't think to mention it.
Right.
But you need that praise just as much as everybody else. And so we have this conversation going on the side of what's going on. And, Johnny's working on this and I'm working on that. And our next steps are, and the parents are kicking back. Oh yeah. And did you know that they've now picked up this and they're leading that club and they're doing this other thing and they dropped that? And oh no, they never mentioned it. And so we have this side conversation going on. And there's the whole part, as you mentioned, about the development of the frontal lobe. They've got that brain development still ahead of them. And they also have, of course, the life experience pieces. And so they may say they want to do whatever. I want to be an avocado grower. Okay. Well, what does it take to grow avocados? I know they grow on trees because I lived in Southern California a long time, but I don't know if you could make money doing that, et cetera, et cetera. But I can go do that research and say, okay, well, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we have not enough avocado growers. And so, yeah, that's a great field. It's growing. You can make decent money, et cetera. Or, oh, wow, we have a glut and we just have more avocados than we know what to do with. What else can we do that's similar? And like to steer that student so that they don't get heart and soul into a career that's just not going to fly. It's not going to meet their other dreams. And to bring that all together, if they want to have a family or they want to travel or whatever those things are, and to do some of that adult vetting for them in a way that I'm still coming alongside. I'm not mom. I'm not crushing their dreams at all. I'm very much still teasing out, yeah, I can see these things. Oh, that really resonates and makes sense. I can really see that in you. I'm also seeing this field isn't that strong. So let's look what's similar enough, and can walk them through that so that they can make a more adult decision and leverage the research and the life experience of me and other professionals to come alongside their 16-year-old idealism,
Right, right. So we're talking about helping the student figure out who they are as an individual, what kind of a life they want to live. I always think about the fact, like, I pursued a degree in audio engineering, not recognizing that I like open windows and I like fresh air. And you don't get much of either of those when you work in an audio engineering studio. It's just not, it's just not a thing. And so had I thought about that, like had 18-year-old me thought about that, I might not have pursued that direction. I don't know. So that's part of, I mean, it seems so mundane, but it's really integral to who the individual is. And that's part of what you can do. I know you also do a lot with helping students find good fit colleges.
I do. And I do that holistically, because the piece that is kind of underneath this that we haven't touched yet, that very much is part of it, is getting their college education at an affordable cost. And so many of our kids are going, and the average in the US, and it has been for over a decade, is 6 years to get a 4-year degree. That's a lot of extra time. That's a lot of extra debt. And that's where most of that debt's coming from, frankly, is the 5th and 6th year. We know that's what's going on. And some of those kids, 8 years, 9 years, if you are in a situation where you're stuck and you're having to work full time and go to school part time, that's one thing. And that's heroic that you're getting through your education anyway. But a lot of other times it's just a lack of planning. And so I went to this school because my friends were going, or it's kind of the cool school to go to in my area or whatever. And I get there and they don't even have the major that I like, and all of those things. So, I get in and the price point is just insane because I hadn't paid any attention to that. So I bring all of those pieces together because we've got the need-based aid piece, we've got the scholarship aid piece, because scholarships, we know 90% of scholarship dollars come from the universities themselves. And so what kind of student are you? What kind of student are you becoming so that you're the kind of student that they're going to want to give scholarship to in your field as you're developing those interests? And doing that matchmaking on that level, as well as, I like the vibe on campus and it's the right size and all those other things that we talked about in a recent Facebook Live through Parent-Teen Connection, to bring those other factors into it. And, everything from I need a huge athletic vibe to, like at Northwestern, we didn't care about athletics and we were terrible at it when I was there. And that was fine. We literally didn't care. But for some people, that's a deal breaker. So whatever those things are, they've got to have the windows with the light, or the weekends where everybody's gone off campus so they have quiet, or that everybody's gone and they feel lonely and that's not a good place. Just bringing all of that together and bringing that financial piece in, whether the family is eligible for need-based aid or they're an abundantly affluent family. Everybody's got a price point of how much they want to spend, what's going to work, what the investment's going to be, and bringing that all together so that the student ends up with a good set of colleges and universities that have the traits that they need in their college education, those opportunities that are just suited for them at the price point, in the location, all those pieces for them. And whether the school is highly ranked, so to speak, or not, we really break that open into, for a student like you wanting to study what you want to study to get into the field, to do the kind of work you want to do and solve the kind of problems you want to solve. These are the top schools.
Right.
And then the rankings are really data based on somebody else's criteria. And sometimes they're helpful pointers and sometimes they're really just distractions.
Exactly. All right. So your advocates, your coaches, therapists in some cases, in some ways, right? Yes. You facilitate communication between students and parents. I've heard you use the phrase, we walk with families, or we walk beside families. You look at it, it seems to me very much as like a team approach to supporting the kiddo, not just in find a college and go to college, but find a place where they're really going to excel as an individual and where they're not going to walk out, hopefully, with inordinate sums of debt at the end of the day.
Right.
So when somebody does decide to retain the services or seek the support of a college planning consultant like you, what should they expect?
That is such a hard question because we offer such an array of services.
Okay.
Most of my colleagues don't do anything on the financial side. I've been filing financial aid forms for 15 years for families. Mm-hmm. And wrap that whole aspect of things into everything that I do and all the considerations. And those are part of the guardrails that the parents say, you know, they want certain states and they want religious schools or not, or public schools or not, and they want the price point to be about whatever it is. All that stuff gets wrapped in, and it's in my head for every part of it. Where a lot of people, they're just in it to get through the application process. Mm-hmm. And that's a very important process, and to really showcase everything you've done. Where I do a lot of student coaching from 8th, 9th, 10th grade, developing the student as a person and a leader in the kind of ways that student can be a strong person and a strong leader, because not everybody's in front of the group. And then we're showcasing and we're looking for summer opportunities in this long-term development process. And then we're showcasing all of that. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm working with students, because I occasionally will have students who just hire me for the essay process. Mm-hmm. And it's so difficult because I don't know them very well. And so then I'll do exercises like, okay, well, based on this essay, I'll play admissions, you know, I think, and I'll start giving attributes. I think you have these attributes and this is your strengths and these are your passions. And is that what you mean to say? And the student usually looks at me funny going, wow, gosh, I could see how, no, that wasn't really what I meant. And so having that long-term relationship, I already know the voice of my student and who they are and what their strengths are. I know what the rest of their application says, so I can even more effectively help them articulate the rest of the message that they need to convey through that application.
That's an interesting perspective I hadn't considered. Sorry, didn't mean to interject, but when you were talking about understanding students' voice and being able to look at something objectively, look at an essay objectively and say, okay, this is what the admissions officer is going to see, or this is what they're going to take away. Whereas with that longer term relationship, you have, if you've been working with a student for a longer time frame, even if it's 6 months, you've gotten to know them better to ascertain what you see as their strengths, but you can also look at it with that experienced eye of this is what the admissions team is going to be looking for. And these are the pieces we can really highlight more effectively.
And I do the same process for both groups of students, because I do that same analysis, because I will do a holistic review as though I'm sitting at admissions and ask myself, does this square with the student that I know? Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, then we'll revise something. But I ensure that it does. And it conveys their hopes and dreams and their strengths. And it deals with whatever their weaknesses are as well, because you can't hide those under a rock. You know, you never want admissions to wonder what's going on with this. Why is this? That's never a good thought to have in their mind. But in the case of the student that I've worked with for a long time, I can coach it differently, mm-hmm. because I could say, you know, you're really conveying a brashness here. And the boldness that I saw wasn't as kind of offensive or grating as what you're conveying here in this essay. Mm. So let's tweak that, or, you know, just those little minor things. And they're like, oh, I hadn't realized. And it's often word choice or adjectives they could add or subtract, and just little things that convey the shades of meaning of who they authentically are. Versus the other one where I could just give the bald, well, here's the analysis and this is what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. Is that you? And you're going to have to tell me, and hopefully you can be honest with yourself, which as teenagers, we're not always so great at, but
right.
You know, when parents wait and they only hire you for just a small part of this process, they tie your hands in so many ways. And it's hard because I recognize we all have budgets and we've got a lot of demands upon us. But this is an investment that makes such an enormous difference in the life of your child. Mm-hmm. And, you know, another question that I often get asked is, well, you know, is it worth it? Are we going to get more out, you know, just dollars and cents wise? And I sort of chuckle and I said, well, that's kind of up to you. Because if you tell me that you want, you know, the highest school the kid can get into, and you don't care that they don't offer any scholarships, then you're not going to get any. But I could also say that over the last 7 graduating years, my average per student is $240K plus.
Right.
So nobody pays me anywhere near $240K to work with their students. So
right.
You don't get this kind of return on investment dollars to dollars wise on any other thing either.
Well, and there's also the aspect too, we've talked about the accumulation of expense when a student changes majors. The average change of major plan is what, 3 times per student, something like that, 2-3 times.
Yeah. And if you add only 1 year, you're adding $50K on average in the national average of cost between the extra expense and the lost income. If you're adding 2 years, it's $100K to your price of your degree. And yeah.
And there's also the aspect, and this is the life coach in me coming out of going, what's the non-quantifiable impact of something like this, right? When you've got a kiddo who maybe they're stuck in a space of, I don't know what I want to do with my life. There's a lot of 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids who don't know what they want to do with their lives. But then they go off to college and mom and dad are like, it's okay, go and decide it, explore a couple of years, whatever. But after a couple of years, they still don't know. And they haven't necessarily accessed the career services or the counseling services or something on campus or whatever. And they're still in this gray space in their brain of, why can't I figure it out? Like, what is the emotional toll that can take that I don't know that we can quantify, but I think that's an important piece. So here's another question for you. What about students who have particular niches? I was a music major. I had an audition aspect, or athletes who maybe they're being recruited, or I know we've talked a good amount about students who have special needs. From an academic perspective, they're on IEPs or 504s. Is that something that every college consultant does? Or are they reasonably equipped to handle some of that? Or what do we have in terms of specialists in this arena?
That's a great question. There's huge variability. So I'm kind of an odd duck that I do a lot of things, but I did engineering at Northwestern and I have a master's in theology and I'm working on a doctorate. So I play both ends of the liberal arts and the engineering, and I do the academics at a high level. That's very atypical. But you will find specialists that are just in the musical area because you have the auditions and you have the putting together of the portfolio for your art students. Now, one of my daughters is an art student, so I've gone through that. I'm not an expert at it. I always partner with an art person to help on the art part of it because I don't speak art. I can help showcase it, but I don't speak it to know if they've got the right number of pieces of different kinds and all of that. The same with dance. I've worked with dance and musical theater as well. So you have to look at the person and say, do you have that experience and do you have that ability to learn? I'm very quickly, you will know about me that I'm a lifelong learner. And that's part of this work that I find so exciting because I get to meet a new student and now we're suddenly discovering another field that has 16 different names because nobody's figured out what the major should be called. So every school's making up a name and it's happening more and more. And I find that really exciting and other people don't. And you have people that are niche with athletes and there's a whole lot of rules with NCAA, NAIA, and by different sports. And so I've been really successful with the ones that I've done, but I'm really selective about it because I know where my limits are in that area. And I don't ever want to have a student that I can't take care of. Mm-hmm. For me, that integrity piece is enormously important. I know places that work with athletes that I would recommend, and I know other places that I would say, please stay away from because you're going to eat your money and you're not going to get much for it.
Right. Well, especially in the athletic world, that's definitely an arena where there are many places that families believe they're going to get some good exposure. That may not be the case, but
right.
So, yeah. All right. So we've got a sense of what a college consultant can do as an advocate, communicator, path walker, side by walker, and what folks can expect in terms of like some do just hourly. You said that you do have some folks who just retain someone like you for help on the essay. Sometimes they just help put together the college list. But some folks like yourself start earlier with more of the real personality exploration. So let's take a couple of minutes and chat about precisely what you can offer. So if any of our listeners feel connected to you, they have a sense of how early they could start. And then if you can give a ballpark in the industry, not necessarily just for you, but what's the ballpark of what somebody can expect to invest for services? Like you said, like, are we going to get an ROI out of it? How much is a family looking at possibly, an investment being?
So I am unusual that I found in the industry. So I do most of my work by packages, but I can take a la carte orders. So sometimes people have different pieces, and if that works with my schedule and I can take that on, I will do it. And if I can't, I won't. And I start with students as early as 8th grade. 8th, 9th, 10th, we're into that whole exploration of self and potential careers and majors and schools and the kinds of schools and narrowing it all down. So we've got a solid list of about 50 schools that are kind of our top tier possible schools that we're looking at. Junior year, we're going to whittle that down to a dozen. And we've got that test at the end of sophomore year, because then we know what classes we want to take junior and senior year and which tests we want to take and what that scheduling needs to look like. And we have it boiled down, so we are evaluating these schools and really shaking them out to see what are the 12 that are going to be the top for this student. And then we go into the application strategy and the whole application process. We're doing the financial side alongside all of that, with an analysis for the need-based aid, which when we've got schools that are pushing $80,000 a year, there's a lot of affluent families that are need eligible that didn't expect to be. And looking at that whole piece as well as the scholarship piece. So that all comes together in the end. We've got a list of schools that are a great fit for the student on all the dimensions important for the student, as well as for the dimensions important for the parents and the financial dimension. And I do it as a package because there's so much flow and overlap in this. And it may be that we're going along. And I've had this happen numerous times, countless times, where a student really wants to do this. And then we get into it and they're realizing that's not what I thought it was. And then they change their major and they're in high school, so it's free. And so, okay, so now we go a different direction, and then we go maybe a third direction or a fourth direction. So then we're in some cases scrapping the entire list and all the research we've done and continuing on, which sometimes the kids apologize. I'm like, oh, no, we're learning and you are articulating yourself better. Mm-hmm. But that process, you can't start junior year. There's not enough time.
Right.
And you ask the cost question, which nobody ever wants to talk about. But there's everything from the highest end that I've seen. They charge about $15,000 for a 1-week application boot camp, which is targeted towards all the highly selective schools. And they seem to do what they do really well. And if that's your bailiwick, then you probably want to go find them. And then down to your mere mortals, the rest of us, we range between $100 and $500 an hour, and our packages are all heavily discounted. So my hourly rate is $250, and then my packages are all under $10,000, even though I'm working with them for 5 years. Sometimes significantly less, depends on if we're doing a complete package, if we're doing parts of it or not.
Sure.
And yeah, and
no, and that's good to know, because when you consider, you look in the media and we see things like the whole college admission scandals that we've had in the last few years and the extents that some folks will go to, right?
Yes.
But then we see that. We also see the fact that the conversations about how college expenses are just going through the roof, not just from a tuition perspective, but room and board and books and all of the add-ons and and that, all the extra pieces that add up. One of probably the professional analogy that comes to me is like, I personally wouldn't ever go buy a home, which is also not an inexpensive investment, without a realtor and without an experienced realtor, because I don't know the ins and outs of property values. I don't know the ins and outs of negotiations of how to actually position my offer, especially in a seller's market, which is what we have in my geography right now. I wouldn't know how to position my offer to beat out other people's offers. And so it seems to me, when you look at the college admissions process as an investment in the student, like, yes, it's a piece of paper, but it's so much more than the piece of paper that gets to be hung on the wall. It seems like you and colleagues in your space are in essence like the realtors who help you go, do you want a condo? Do you want a backyard? Do you expect to have a family in the next 3 years? Like, how many rooms do you need? How much space do you like? Those kinds of things that we can recognize as adults. These are all the kinds of things it seems like that they're analogous to helping our students figure those out. And you're kind of the sage who helps them do that.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, for a $250,000 house, typically it's a 6% commission to that realtor. That's $15,000. So depending on where you're going to university, you're paying more than that or a little bit less than that. And you're paying us a lot less than $15,000. And it's not buying a thing that you're going to live in. This is the formation of your child, and it's the setting your child up for further formation in an environment where they could thrive.
Right.
And managing the expectations, making it realistic so that they're not in a place where they're, in by their fingernails, and by the end of 4 years or however long it takes them to graduate, at the bottom of the class at Harvard, and they feel like garbage because they're at the bottom of the class. We know, we've done the studies, we know that those kids at the bottom of the class at Harvard don't do as well in life as the top half of the class for the next couple of tiers down because of that emotional hit. So we've got your student position with all of these considerations coming into the mix, so that we can really know that this student with this personality and these inclinations is going to thrive in these environments, whether they're really competitive environments, because that's where they thrive, or more hands-on environments, or more collegial environments, or study abroad environments. There's just such a spectrum out there. And having that formation for your child through high school and then launching them into college in a way that they're going to continue that we can't put a price on that.
Right.
And you mentioned at the beginning about how we discern who to work with. And I definitely, we need to interview college consultants. You need to meet with us. A lot of times it's going to be a paid consultation, so be prepared for that.
Yeah.
That's not unusual. This is like going to meet a doctor that's going to do surgery on you. You don't go in for free. You have to pay to get the consultation, decide you want to continue with this therapy that they're recommended or not. It's the same with us. It's a professional consultation. So many of us charge for that. And it's as much for us to interview you as a family as it is for you to interview us. Because there has to be rapport. There has to be some trust with that student. There has to be the sense that we're on the same page. We have similar values. Our values as a family can be supported by this consultant or not. This person's going to be trustworthy. This person's going to share with us the needs and that they're seeing with our child. And the consultant needs to know you're being forthright with them, because it does happen, and we talk about it, that somebody will have a kid that has an IEP or have Asperger's or something. And, in your 1 hour meeting, you're not completely sure how much is personality, how much is nerves, and then to find out down the road, oh, there's a massive anxiety problem or this or that. And it's like, you've broken that trust. You, the family, have broken the trust with the consultant. And we don't have that upfront understanding of these are what the needs of my child are, so that we can say, yes, I have that skill set and I can support them, whether it's because they're an athlete and they need recruiting help, or it's because they've got some kind of a special need, whether it's a learning style or personality or whatever it is, to make sure that there's a good, solid, open communication, trust is happening, the evaluation of the credentials of the professional and the evaluation of the family's needs, so that, yep, there's a match here, or no, there's not a match here. Awesome. And this is not a decision you make on price.
Agreed. All right, cool. So Katherine O'Brien, Celtic college consultants. Apparently my words aren't cooperating. We are going to have all your contact information in the show notes. And for any of our listeners, you can absolutely find all of Katherine's information at www.ParenTweenConnection.com. She is one of our founding trusted experts. So we are going to call it a wrap for today for our podcast. And for those of you who are members of ParenTween University, make sure that you check in, because after we wrap this up, Katherine and I are going to have a little bit more of a conversation about the actual interview with a college consultant, what you want to ask, how you want to evaluate even more in depth than what we've talked about so far. So Katherine, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Clarissa. My pleasure.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of ParenTween Connection Talks. Be sure to check the show notes for any links we mentioned. Also, be sure to subscribe to ParenTween Connection Talks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, so you don't miss out on any awesome information. If you'd like your own copy of the Foundations of Connection, you can find it right on our homepage at ParenTweenConnection.com. Print it out, hang it on your fridge, and use it as a conversation starter with the folks in your family today. And if you want to feel more supported as a parent and have a closer, healthier, happier relationship with the tween in your life, enroll in ParenTween University. For just $19.99 a month or $199 a year, you'll join a community of parents just like you who are dedicated to having the best relationships they can with their kids. You'll receive exclusive bonus trainings from many of our podcast guests and access to monthly group coaching calls based on my signature coaching program, The Foundations of Connection. So go to www.ParenTweenConnection.com today to help ensure that you're the one your kids will talk to when they need someone they can trust. Until next time, keep talking and keep connecting.